Hello Serie A fan. The Azzurri are back in form after a disappointing start to the round, but two standout performances from Kean and Raspadori signal a changing of the guard. We chat about that, plus look ahead to the weekend games, as well as bringing you a special interview from Venezia fan Marco Rinaldi on this episode of Scudetto. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Scudetto. And the international break's now over, obviously ending on a high note for the Azzurri. So we're going to be looking back over the latter two games. Plus, we've got a very special interview for you with Venezia fan Marco Rinaldi. And then obviously we'll be looking ahead to the weekend games. So lots to get through. But first, let's catch up with the squad. Kenny, good evening. How are you getting on?
Good evening, Oscar. I'm doing well. I feel like it might have been Boaz's turn to go first this week, but yeah, I'm good. How are you doing?
Was it? We need to start keeping track of that. We're tracking a lot of things now under the new regime for organising the podcast, but that's not one of the things that's being tracked.
I'm just the warm-up act.
That's because it's a 50-50 option. It's nothing. There's not a lot to remember.
Well, since I've had my vaccine, obviously my memory is starting to deteriorate. So.
Your memory's all being used up by Bill Gates, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so I need more RAM for the 5G signal. Anyway, what are you drinking, Kenny?
Yeah, I'm sticking with my sticking to my guns, still on the alcohol-free beers. But you remember I was slightly disappointed to be having a BrewDog Punk AF, and this week I have upgraded to a BrewDog Nanny State, which is, yeah, as I remember it, much nicer.
Very good. Yeah, we were coming across as sort of borderline alcoholics last week, but
You were.
Yeah, well, I'm not even drinking this week. Kenny's on the non-alcoholic. So how about you, Baz? You keeping up our reputation?
I'm having my one weekly beer as usual during the recording of this episode, and then 6 more before tomorrow night.
Cool. So what have you been up to for the rest of the week whilst not drinking beer?
It's actually Rosh Hashanah, which is Jewish New Year, and since we had a little bit of time off, we decided to take our son to the local safari. And as these things often happen, he was completely awake the whole drive there. He was smiling, happy. And then as soon as we paid to get in, he fell asleep. So that was nice. But perhaps my highlight of this trip was me attempting to speak to the kangaroos in a full Australian accent. And I'm not going to do it now in case I offend the whole nation. But let's say the kangaroos weren't too happy with my suggestions of a Barbie and beers and surfing. So there you have it.
That's fantastic. And Happy New Year.
Thank you.
While we're on the topic, actually, of Australian accents, maybe we should check in on the tipping league, which this is the Tifosi Down Under tipping league, which we're taking it in turns to submit our predictions to. Kenny, you're up this week. Feeling confident?
I was feeling a lot more confident last week when you asked me than this week when I had to make the predictions. I actually put down all of my scores, and just before I hit submit, I kind of had a look at the scores, and I thought that's way too many high scoring games there. So I just knocked a couple of goals off here and there, and then hit submit, and then did my sums and realised that my total of goals was actually about 7 goals less than there were in match week 1 of Serie A. So I guess that's just testament to how many goals are actually scored in the league.
Indeed. Anyway, yeah, we'll check in next week when it's my turn again, and hopefully you would have done worse than me, because I
doubt
fancy.
That.
Well, okay, I guess we'll see about that then, Kenny. Just before we move on and talk about the Azzurri, just wanted to say thank you to all of the listeners who tweeted, sent us Facebook messages, WhatsApp messages,
snail mail,
or anyone who got in touch just to say
pigeon.
Congratulations on our 50th episode. We appreciate it very much. So, we thought after Switzerland last week that it was sort of a bit of a disappointing international round for Italy. But all things considered, it's sort of job done now, isn't it, Kenny?
Yeah, I mean, I think to a certain extent, there was a lot of negative reaction, I think, after the first 2 games. The reality is that Italy didn't actually play badly in either the Bulgaria game or the Switzerland game. The problem was, as it has been for Italy, in actually just taking their chances. I mean, in particular, the first half against Switzerland, they had plenty of chances to go in. They should really, before Jorginho's penalty miss, that horrific penalty miss, Italy should already have been 1 or 2 goals up. But yeah, I mean, despite that, disappointing to come away from those first 2 games with just 2 points. But then, obviously, it was Lithuania, but had that resounding victory, and Switzerland dropped points elsewhere. And I think if you'd offered Italy 7 points from the games, under the assumption that Switzerland would have got full points off of Northern Ireland, Italy would have been perfectly happy with that. So they have been, I guess, let out of jail a little bit and looking in a really, really strong position going into the last 4 games, if you ask me.
Yeah, absolutely. And a little bit of a kind of transformation between the first and second game. Obviously, Baz, Insigne, Immobile, Berardi all missed quite a lot of chances against Switzerland. So do we think the kind of young guns have thrown up a bit of a solution to the striker problem with Raspadori and Kean, Moise Kean obviously coming in and doing very well?
First of all, of course, Italy were only playing Lithuania, so the team, the other team on the pitch weren't that strong, but it was curious to see Italy sending home so many players before what became a key game, most of whom went away for injuries and supposed injuries, although Insigne also went away for family reasons, so hopefully that issue will resolve itself before the Juve game. But in any case, we've long been fans of both Moise Kean or Moise Kean, however you want to pronounce it, and Raspadori, and to see them both play up front for the Azzurri kind of bodes well for the future. And while I think Ciro Immobile will not be losing his place just yet, maybe he needs to start looking over his shoulder.
Yeah, I mean, they were absolutely on fire, weren't they? And I know that the people were clamouring to give Raspadori 2 goals. I think it's a bit generous on the first one, to be honest. It looks to me like they've got that one right as an own goal, because there is absolutely no way at all that shot was going on target. But yeah, I mean, what a full international debut for him in his home stadium in front of all of his family to get the goal. And I mean, I think Italy have been crying out for someone like him. We hoped that it could have been Immobile. Maybe it still can be, but just a bit of a predator, really, for the goal that he did actually get. Just nothing spectacular about it, but just a real goal scorer's goal. Right place, right time, no messing about.
Yeah, and Kane as well, who was obviously a bit gutted to be left at home over the summer in the Euros, and apparently had been spoken himself about that and been promised another chance in the squad by Mancini. So great to see him back. Baz, I know you did want to just pick out one slight negative. We've got some criticism for Italy's number 1.
Well, it's obvious to everyone who listens to this podcast that Gigi Donnarumma is a fantastic keeper. Perhaps his play with his feet is not the best element of his game. And in a match where Italy dominate possession, really he has no major saves to make. Let's say he did stress a few people out with his casual passes and some of his brash deliveries. And for those people who think that I might have an agenda against the big keeper because he left AC Milan to ostensibly sit on a bench somewhere in Paris, I have to say that this was an opinion that was also set out by Gazzetta dello Sport and Corriere dello Sport, and he was also quite criticized by the captain Jorginho as well as Brian Cristante and Acerbi during the games. So maybe it's something that while he's got a lot of spare time right now, maybe he can work on his footwork.
Yeah, well, we did speak about the move, and Kenny very wisely pointing out that what's maybe best in the short term is not the best long-term career move. Guess we'll have to see how that one works out.
Yeah.
But now it's time for our interview with Venezia supporter Marco Rinaldi, who Kenny spoke to earlier.
So, Marco, thank you very much for joining us. It's a real pleasure to have you on the pod, and welcome to Scudetto.
Thanks very much for having me.
Great. So, I thought obviously the Venezia story over the last 20 years or so has been, it's been a bit of an incredible one, really. Obviously, things looking quite positive at the moment, but I thought a nice place to start would be if we just kind of spoke a little bit about the promotion. I know that it's been, obviously, the last sort of year and a half have been a strange time for everybody with COVID, and we've kind of seen that with football firsthand, empty stadiums, sort of lockdown affecting football as well. But Venezia have kind of almost used it as a reset as a club. I know that they were struggling pre-lockdown, and then they kind of turned that around afterwards, turned what was a relegation-threatened season into kind of a solid mid-table finish, and then went on a hiring spree of backroom staff, and eventually ended up finishing 5th and getting promoted to Serie A through the playoffs. How does it feel as a Venezia fan to be back in Serie A after, I believe it's nearly 20 years, just with everything the club's been through, with the various relegation fights, the bankruptcy, the starting again from Serie D, the new owners?
So, I mean, obviously it's brilliant to be in Serie A and sort of unexpected after all this time. I mean, there's been, I think, 3 bankruptcies and various owners in the past, since the last time we were in Serie A. But since Tacopina took us over in 2016, I think it was, there has been a sort of confidence that, we've been on an upward trajectory. We got promoted from Serie D, Serie C. We had Inzaghi as manager, and, been in Serie B. I think we were in Serie B for 3 seasons, and we were relegated officially in one of those seasons, but Palermo went bust, so we got back in. And then it was really after that, we sort of bounced off that. As you said, we had the season with Dionisi, who's now at Sassuolo as manager, and we turned that season around. And then last season we got Zanetti in, who really transformed the club. I think he to me is a very exciting manager. Dionisi is a good manager as well, but Zanetti seems to be able to forge a real team spirit among players that were from all around Europe. He managed to create a great team, and we really defied expectations last season to finish 5th, and then obviously had the great playoff run, which was topped off for me by, even though we were technically already through pretty much when Bocalon scored his goal in the 95th minute against Cittadella, it was fitting that he, a true Venetian, should do that, score the last goal to take us up.
Yeah, so I mean, you've spoken obviously a bit about the promotion there, but obviously from that, there's it's actually been kind of a marked difference, I think, between the way that the 3 promoted clubs have kind of faced the transfer window. You've obviously got Salernitana, who have just splashed the cash on Ribéry and got Simi in, and they seem to have complemented that with a load of signings from sort of bigger Serie A clubs. Empoli have gone a bit more for continuity, perhaps, although I think they've kind of got a whole new backline. But other than that, they've kind of just brought in, a couple of people like Cutrone and the like, sort of loan again, a couple of signings from, established Serie A players. Venezia, on the other hand, seem to have kind of made somewhat sort of wholesale changes, but it very much seems to be focused on kind of more of a sort of scouting network across Europe. Obviously, before we sort of started recording this, in the past couple of days, you mentioned to me that Venezia are looking to emulate the type of thing that Atalanta have done. How do you actually see the squad shaping up? To what extent do you think it's a challenge to bring all of those pieces kind of together into a cohesive squad?
Yeah, I mean, I think it worked last season. We brought in a few young players and a couple of experienced players from Europe, and we had sort of Dennis Johnson, Chernigoy, and various others that came in and did well. I think I am a bit concerned about our approach to the transfer market this window, because we really have changed everything. And not only that, as you say, we've not bought anyone with any real experience of Serie A or Italian football. And it's fine, I think, as a policy, as a long-term, medium-term goal for the club to say, let's buy promising youngsters, develop them, and then sell them on for a profit. I think that's a good, sustainable model. But I'm just worried that this season we've bought these youngsters, some of whom, like Buzio from the MLS, looks actually really good in the game against Udinese. To me, gave away the second goal, but apart from that, he had a great game. But I just worry, even though Zanetti is great at creating a team spirit and everything, we've got rid of that team that fought for each other so hard last season. And I'm worried about the cohesiveness and how quickly he can forge that again. And we've got games against Empoli and Spezia coming up in the next couple of weeks. And those are the sort of games we need to be aiming to win if we want to try and survive. So we've made life pretty difficult for ourselves, I think.
Yeah, it's trying to get it to gel as quickly as possible. I mean, you mentioned the upcoming games there. Obviously, a little bit sort of further down the line, there's Milan coming up as well. I think after those two games, it has been kind of a challenging start to the season, really. We've particularly been impressed with Empoli, I'd say, in the first couple of games that we've seen. Personally, I thought they were actually, the scoreline didn't really, in the Lazio game, didn't really reflect the game. And obviously they had that incredible result in Turin as well. How do you feel going into the game? How do you see it going? Obviously, Empoli have that element of continuity, perhaps, that Venezia don't have. Are you feeling positive going into it? Are you feeling at all apprehensive?
Apprehensive is the word, definitely, because it's one of these games that I feel we need to win. Now, I always thought that the start of the season was we would look in a worse position than we actually have the potential to be in, because we are away from home, because we've got work being done on the pen. So we asked for a few games away from home at the start of the season. We've got all these new players. It will take time for them to gel. Yeah. So I did always think the start would be a bit bumpy, but I have to say that, as you've alluded to, Empoli have that continuity, and it's evident. And what I'm just slightly worried about is that we don't have that. There's a potential that we could line up against Empoli with none of our players from last season, apart from one of our goalkeepers, who none of whom I think are particularly very good. So, I think we should have kept the core of our team. To me, someone like in our midfield, Fiorgemino, is as good as some of these new guys, Tesman, who's unproven from the MLS, and people like that, or Heymans. I would have preferred to see us keep the core of the team and add a few elements in slowly. Yeah. Like Forte was dropped for the game against Udinese, even though I thought he played quite well against Napoli, and he was such a key part of our promotion. So I'm just worried that might affect his confidence as well. So I am apprehensive about the Empoli game, because it is we're away from home, but it's still a game that we need to be taking points from if we want to have any chance of survival.
Okay. Obviously these two games, as you've said, they're kind of the games that you want to be winning, really, if you're looking to kind of kick on and establish yourselves in Serie A. But I wonder as well if the other games, Udine, never an easy place to go. Napoli, obviously, very, very difficult first game back, and then that Milan game coming up. Is that perhaps a blessing in disguise that you're getting some of these really difficult games out of the way early, and it gives the team a chance to gel? A better way of asking the question, I guess, is just up front, what are your expectations for the seasons? Perhaps not like a sort of snap prediction, but kind of expectations and hopes for the season ahead.
Yeah. I think it's going to be very difficult for us. I thought it would be difficult beforehand, and after the first two games and then losing a friendly 4-0 to Brescia just last week doesn't bode well. So I think it's going to be an incredibly difficult season. I do have faith, if we give him time, that Zanetti will create a tough team to beat, and actually his teams play nice progressive football. Yeah. And I think some of the new guys do look pretty good. I've mentioned Buzio before, who I think has the potential to be a really good player. And Henry up front may turn out to be a good striker. So I think it's going to be a very tough season, and we're going to have to enjoy the highs infrequently. But I still have a hope, that we can claw out a survival, because once we get going, I think, if Zanetti can get that same sort of team spirit, then we will become harder to beat, and hopefully we'll be able to surprise a few teams as well, so that even if we don't get points from Empoli, you might get a surprise result against a Genoa or a Fiorentina or something like that.
Brilliant. Well, Marco, thank you very much for agreeing to come on and speak to us. And all the very best for the season ahead.
Thanks very much for having me.
Thanks very much to Marco Rinaldi there, and you can find Marco Rinaldi at Marco R Rinaldi. He'll be tweeting about all things Venezia, and he recently wrote a great piece on Venezia's stadium for the Gentleman Ultra. So if you're interested, do check that out. So it'd be interesting to see how Venezia get on at the weekend against Empoli. And it's a pretty exciting weekend of fixtures, actually, isn't it, Kenny?
Absolutely.
How confident are you feeling about the Atalanta game? Maybe we start there. I know you've...
Okay.
In fact, did you predict a draw in the end, or did you predict Atalanta to actually come off worse against Fiorentina?
Yes, spoiler here. I've actually gone for an away win in that game. I'm kind of second questioning myself a little bit because Fiorentina and I think Inter and Juve are the two other ones. They're one of the clubs who have got quite a few of their sort of main sort of starting 11 really away on international duty and only coming back. I think Fiorentina have Pulgar, Gonzalez and Quarta coming back on the Friday before the game, so that might disrupt them a little bit. But I mean, for quite a few reasons, I fancy Fiorentina. I think, for starters, Atalanta, as they quite often do, have started slowly. They haven't hugely impressed in the first two games. I think also Atalanta have their injury problems. Obviously, Gozens was a doubt, but he actually came on for Germany in their last game in the international break, so hopefully he'll be okay. But Hateboer, long-term injury. Muriel, really worryingly for Atalanta fans, looks like he's going to be out for a long time. He's got a muscular injury, and apparently they're leaving it for a week before even giving him a scan, so that doesn't sound great at all. Zapata's not back to full fitness. I just think now is the right time to be facing Atalanta, really. And Fiorentina, as I've said last week in our last podcast, Fiorentina have really, really impressed me at the start of the season. They're looking great under Italiano. But the reason I'm second questioning myself is just the number of players who have done that long haul journey so close to the game for Fiorentina. So, interesting one, but certainly this isn't the Fiorentina of last season. And the Atalanta that starts the season is never the Atalanta that finishes it.
No, for sure. Definitely accept all those arguments. I still think they're more likely to share the points.
Score draw for you, is it?
Maybe it's a score draw, probably a 2-2 if I had to predict. And then also you'd have a few more goals to kind of get closer to your average total. But how about you guys? Looking forward to this weekend. Milan v Lazio Sunday night. It's going to be a tough one, isn't it?
It's definitely a big game, and it's the first true test for either side this season. And it also comes in a pretty heavy and intense week for Milan as a whole. So it's a good time to see where this squad is at and how Pioli's game has developed, and where these new players like Magnan, and I think Giroud will not make it because he had COVID, but where the new players can fit in. And it's interesting to know that Lazio have not beaten Milan at San Siro in the last 20 games. So and that's Milan's longest unbeaten streak in Serie A, apart from against Torino. And also that we've mentioned him in a past episode, but former super potential young star Pietro Pellegrini he's the youngest player ever to score a brace in Serie A, and those goals came against Lazio. But the aforementioned Ciro Immobile has also scored 8 times in his 13 games against Milan. So it's one of these games that could go either way. I'm quietly confident, actually, because I I think that maybe Lazio have kind of performed better than the underlying numbers suggest in their first two games, and they were playing against Spezia and Empoli, with all due respect to those sides, but still it will be a tough game, and it's going to be interesting to come up against Sarri and Sarismo. This is the first episode where Sarri is in Serie A where we're on air, so I'm kind of curious to watch more of Lazio, because of course I watched him when he was at Chelsea and also at Napoli and Juve, but now we're in the mix of it, so suddenly I have some sort of obligation to see what he's doing, and obviously, as I said, it's going to be really interesting.
Yeah, for sure. And it's looked good from the highlights so far, but like you say, it will be good to see that live.
I think an interesting point about this game as well is if reports are to be believed, Frank Kessie will be back in the Milan side, and Zlatan Ibrahimovic as well. Apparently, is touch and go whether he'll play. So I mean, it could be a near full strength Milan. Obviously, they had that worrying news about Giroud, so no doubt the sight of Zlatan Ibrahimovic coming back is something that will be welcomed by Milan fans. But yeah, it should be a great game. One of the games of the weekend.
And just to add a little bit more statistical information about why I suggested Lazio maybe have been overachieving. They scored 9 goals in the first two games, yet their XG was 4.7, which is the biggest gap between actual goals scored and the XG in Europe besides PSG. So that says a lot. And one last thing about Milan is, if they were to win this game, it would be the first time ever that they would have won their first 3 games in back-to-back seasons.
Good stat.
Something to aim for you guys then. It's almost as good as a trophy coming from a Spurs fan.
Ooh.
But yeah, both of you mentioned in your previews there the kind of players that are out and missing, and obviously kind of inevitable in COVID times. And there'll be a few players missing from Napoli, Juve as well, but probably still the pick of the weekend games, isn't it, Kenny?
Yeah, well, as Boaz mentioned earlier, we'll have to see if Insigne is back. But yeah, Juve are actually the team that seem to be worst affected by that sort of late return of players from South America. So Dybala and Cuadrado coming back on the Friday, and apparently Alexandro, Danilo and Bentancur not expected back until Saturday. And I have to say, I said it last week as well, I think possibly the kind of crisis at Juve is overblown a little bit. I think you look at the players they've got a very, very strong starting 11. If anything, perhaps they don't have the depth that you would expect of a Juve, but just those names. I mean, Cuadrado, absolutely vital, one of the best right backs, if not the best right back in Serie A in recent seasons. Dybala, we've made a lot about the fact that he needs to sort of improve on last season when he had all sorts of issues. If they're going to find replacement for the spark created by Cristiano Ronaldo's departure. And then, yeah, I mean, who's gonna partner? Locatelli presumably will start, but who's going to partner him in the centre of midfield? So they do have a lot of problems there. I don't know why. There's no logic to it, but I just can't see Juve having another disappointing week. I think with Max Allegri at the helm, I kind of feel like they've got to click into gear sooner rather than later. It's a tough one. I have a slight hunch that Juve are going to win this one.
Big talk about your predictions, but they seem, I don't know, there's a couple of strange ones in there for sure. You've got both Juve and
hang me out to
Juve
dry.
turning it around, Atalanta losing. Yeah, what do you think of his predictions, Baz, specifically for this game?
I think this game is a very hard game to call. Of course, while Kenny mentions that Juve have a bit of an injury crisis, or at the very least World Cup qualification players coming back crisis, Napoli have their own issues with their goalkeepers being injured or presumably injured. And of course, you have to remember that Napoli kind of struggled in the first 2 games, albeit with 10 players in the game against Venezia. But you could look at it in 2 different ways. You could say that Napoli showed a lot of character in these games where they possibly struggled, but they got away with a win, whereas in the past they might have dropped points. But at the same time, you have to wonder what they'll do when they'll come up against a team like Juventus, particularly considering that Spalletti has only beaten Juventus once in 20 encounters.
So be looking forward to watching that one, the early evening kickoff on the Saturday as well. So great time for it. We should just say in other news, obviously players been coming back slightly late, as we mentioned in the Juve game. But Diawara plus 2 Fiorentina players, Amrabat and Maleh, got caught up in the coup in Guinea. And we do now have news they've all safely got out of there. So obviously very thankful for that. But as on a slightly lighter note, you've been keeping track of Italians of travelling abroad elsewhere.
So yeah, this is my favorite segment, keeping up with the Italians. And I'm happy to report that Stefano Caca has moved from Udinese and joins a growing rank of Italians and former Serie A players in Turkey, including Mario Balotelli's brother, who was in the second division there. The other international fact that I wanted to add was that Eddie Rea's Albania beat Marco Rossi's Hungary 1-0, so kind of an international derby there. And going back to the core, the raison d'etre of this segment, we have Juventus traveling to Malmo for a game, and you'd be interested to know that Malmo was first mentioned as a city in 1275 and has received its coat of arms in 1437 and has and is located
I wonder where you got that fact from.
And since the construction of the Orsgun Bridge, Malmo has undergone a major transformation, now producing architectural developments. So definitely a place to visit if that's your kind of thing. And
it's amazing knowledge, Buzz, really.
And our good friends at Atalanta will be traveling to Villarreal, where they can see Groguet, who is the submarine-headed figure that is the team's mascot. I'm sure that's a huge highlight if you're ever in the city. And lastly, my beloved AC Milan will travel to Liverpool, where they can see the port, which was formerly a UNESCO World Heritage Site, but because it got so developed and so cool, UNESCO decided to take this title away from them. And from what I can understand, Liverpool are quite happy that this title is taken away because they've managed to regenerate the whole area. So I'm sure the Milan fans will be glad, if any Milan fans travel, will be glad to go over there and get beaten up.
Looking forward to next week when we travel to Istanbul with Lazio and to Leicester with Roma. So get researching, Bars.
That would be fun.
It will be fun.
If anyone has any interesting facts about Malmo, I swear I looked a lot, but it seems like a slightly, let's say, lackluster place to travel. Sorry.
It's got a good bridge, I heard. Anyway. Bars, do you want to kick us off in the honourable and dishonourables? Weston McKennie.
Yeah, this is, we have a regular award on the show called Living La Vidal Loca for outstanding idiocy off the field. And actually, we gave an award to Nyangolan for drink driving a couple of weeks ago, and that should have fallen under this, but we forgot about it. But we have a new entry, and probably someone who goes straight to the top of the list, and it's Weston McKennie, who managed to break curfew and protocol twice while away with the U.S. men's national team. And firstly, the one night apparently he was off the outside of the location or the hotel or wherever they were staying, and apparently the following night he had someone an unidentified person come to his room. So I mean, having already been up to these kind of shenanigans with Juventus last season, I think maybe he needs to get his head screwed back on his shoulders, because it looks like he's got a bit of a head of himself.
Indeed.
Naughty.
Kenny, do you want to give us your obligatory goals honourable?
Yeah, obligatory goals honourable. I don't think I can look much further than Moise Kean this week for his second and Italy's fourth goal against Lithuania. Just a really, really lovely technique, beautiful volley, and it has to be said, credit to Bernardeschi for his floated pass through as well. And the other goals honourable I'm giving is for Milan/Spal's Lorenzo Colombo, for what was a face-saving, albeit very attractive goal for the Azzurri versus Montenegro. Just a very nice kind of classic turn and hit into the bottom corner. But yeah, great one. So go and check that one out as well.
Absolutely. I'll make sure to look them all up again. Buzz, is this an honourable or a dishonourable for a well-learned geezer?
It's definitely an honourable. Ignazio Cocchiere's career would definitely not seem remarkable to most. He had a youth career with Varese, and he was in Inter's reserve with Mario Balotelli and Leonardo Bonucci, amongst other players. But let's say his career never took off to the standards of those players, and he played in Lega Pro and Switzerland and Belgium. But what differentiates this guy from other players is that while he was traveling around Europe, he was also studying at various universities in Geneva and in Belgium. And currently he works for the European Parliament while he also plays in the second division in Belgium. So, I mean, it's nice that he can multitask like this.
What a career. And Kenny, back on the Azzurri, you've got one for the boss.
For the gaffer, Mancini, yeah. This was he was asked about the fact that I think Jorginho and Donnarumma were the only players that started all three of the games in the international round of fixtures. And I think Jorginho, the only reason he started is just because he said he didn't really have any other options, and he asked him to give him at least 45 minutes. But just his quote afterwards, which seemed very grown up and responsible, as we don't often see this sort of thing between international managers and the clubs. But he said, I didn't get any calls from any of the clubs, obviously asking me to rest the players. If we can occasionally safeguard players, I don't see a problem. We always have done so, and we always will. And yeah, I just think great stuff. Nice pragmatism from Mancini there. And yeah, as we mentioned already, got results anyway.
Indeed. And speaking of Jorginho, we should just give him an honourable for being the first foreign-born captain since 1960. And Boaz, you now have an honourable for... Yeah,
this is a slightly more somber tone. Unfortunately, Juventus youngster Brian Dodien passed away from cancer recently, and he'd beaten the disease a couple of years ago and was famously... Paul Pogba supported him massively and sent him like wishes, and also while he was at Juve he showed a shirt with his name on it, but unfortunately the disease came back, and the guy lost his battle with it, and obviously it's sad news, and all of the Juventus's social media presence was suitably sending messages, and there was a lot of support from the whole of the Serie A world, which is nice to see at least.
Yeah, very sad.
Yeah, indeed. And just want to slightly lighten the tone after that. I guess we discussed Tomiyasu's transfer from Bologna to Arsenal briefly last week, but we should just give him an honourable for introducing himself as Tommy from Bologna.
Top bloke.
Top bloke indeed. Boaz, you've got one more dishonourable though.
Yeah, this is the story that developed last week when both Milan and Inter announced their Champions League tickets allocations and also the pricing, and for most of the sections in San Siro the Milan pricing was almost double the amount that the Inter was. Now if I had to be a little bit funny about this, I'd say that you're getting double the amount of value, so it makes sense. But obviously particularly with a global pandemic and a lot of people being out of work or at the very least underworked, it's kind of ridiculous to ask for this much money for to see a football match, albeit the first Champions League game in so many years. And I think that particularly areas like the Curva and areas that maybe are a little bit less fancy should be somehow allocated to those fans that maybe can't afford to have a VIP session every time. Having said that, the price of living in Italy has really gone up since the pandemic, and you have to see that also huge concerts are going for massive prices. So, I mean, it makes sense that if there is a lot of demand for these tickets, that Milan would try and raise it. But maybe next time Milan and Inter should consult before announcing their pricing.
Yeah, it is. It's a little bit depressing, isn't it? All of the Twitter comments that you see from American followers of the league just saying like you should see how much the NFL costs, which not really the point. Dishonourable for those people. Kenny, you wanted to end us off with a pretty hilarious one.
Yeah, this is. I'm not sure. I think it's going to be a dishonourable for the Larry geezer with a whistle in the crowd of the Italy-Lithuania game, who decided to blow the final whistle about 15 seconds before the referee. And prompted the stadium PA guy to blare music out across the stadium. All of the players to kind of stop playing.
It was convincing, to be fair.
It was very professionally done. I mean, maybe a trained ref or something.
No chance. Nah, definitely not. You wouldn't get a referee doing something like that.
No, probably not. But literally all of the players stopped playing, and the referee running around hilariously trying to explain that the game wasn't finished yet, only to restart it for a full 10 or 15 seconds afterwards. So I think I quote Boaz here when I say naughty, naughty.
Yeah, and also if he was a trained referee, we wouldn't be able to give him a dishonourable. So let's assume
there is
wasn't.
that.
And your boy Di Silvestri handled it right after the false whistle went off. And so that was also kind of funny.
Yeah, it would have been good if he'd given a free kick. Anyway, that is all we've got time for this week. So thanks very much to our listeners. Thank you again to Marco Rinaldi for the excellent interview. We'll be back next week. Until then, enjoy the football.
Che sta decretando lo scudetto del Milan in questo preciso istante. La Juventus è campione d'Italia questa data, il 6 maggio.
Anticipo, la Roma è campione d'Italia per la stagione 2000-2001.